Good morning, everyone. It's Champions League Day. Welcome back to the Celtic Way. I am your host, John McGinley. We're joined by Ryan this morning. We're here to chat through all the news and predictions ahead of FC Kairat tonight, visiting Glasgow. Ryan, how you feeling? European Day is here. I know qualifying for the Champions League isn't for everyone, but for Celtic, it's still the goal. How are you feeling?
Yeah, pretty excited for the game ahead. Despite it not being like a league phase game or a group stage game, it's still a European game and a game that Celtic will look to go and win and progress into the Champions League proper. So feels like the calm before the storm at this moment in time. A little bit quiet in and around places, but as we get closer and closer to kick-off, I'm sure the decibels will increase as I'm going to Celtic Park tonight. But yeah, it's if I was to describe it as anything, I think it's the calm before the storm. And I think we're all looking forward to seeing Celtic back in action under the lights in Europe tonight.
This is a massive, massive game. It goes without saying what the stakes are in terms of finance, in terms of prestige, and in terms of adding energy to Celtic season. I think it all starts tonight. I think a good performance and a good result against FC Kairat tonight really sets Celtic up well for the second leg and then ultimately for progression into the league phase. They have to earn it, I think, Ryan. I don't think anything's going to be given to Celtic tonight. This Kairat team, the Kazakh champions, they've beaten the Slovenian champions, they've beaten the Finnish champions, they've beaten the Slovakian champions. They have belief that they can take this next step and become the first team in a decade from Kazakhstan to qualify for the group or league phase of the Champions League. I don't think it's going to be. It's not a gimme tonight, is what I'm trying to say. I think Celtic need to come into this game with real intensity and intent, and bring the fire to the visitors.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the most important thing, or one of the most important things that the because they'll get the support off the pitch, but they need to show it on the pitch. They need to bring that level. They need to bring that intensity and quality to Kairat. Now I've got to say Kairat are here on merit because they've came through three qualifying rounds to get to this stage. That's not by luck. That's by merit, and they deserve to be here and they deserve to be part of this tie. But it's time for Celtic to stop that fairy tale journey. Beginning tonight at home at Celtic Park. I want home advantage to be used by Celtic tonight, and I want daylight between the two sides. If I'm being greedy, a little bit greedy. In an ideal world, I want clear daylight going into the second leg, akin to the Astana game in which Celtic won 4-5-0 in the first leg. I know the second leg was wild and crazy and chaos, and Callum McGregor even discussed that chaos yesterday. But if they can, now it might not be the case, but if they can, I'd like to see clear daylight between the two sides tonight, because then it tells me that Celtic have used their home advantage to their advantage, essentially.
I mean, there's a lot of chat in our live chat at the moment about what occurred at Ibrox last night,
Yeah.
just in terms of like, and listen, that's a reminder of how things can go wrong if you get it wrong on a night like this. Now, I think Club Brugge are obviously a much better team than FC Kairat, I would suggest, but I mean, we played them last year in the Champions League, and they were very good in the first half against Celtic, I thought. But it's just, again, it's an example of what can go wrong, and if you don't go into this game with your team right and your team organised in the right way, then it can all unravel quickly. Just in terms of the team tonight, Ryan, then, I think there was a comment in the chat earlier that tonight's team pretty much picks itself based on what Rodgers has gone with in the early stage of this season. We're going to throw up a team here, a predicted 11 for tonight's game. Now, I'm not sure if this is the team I would particularly go with myself. I might be tempted to make a couple of changes here and there, but this is the team that we think Brendan Rodgers is going to go with. Just based on his selection kind of patterns so far this season, it looks like it'll probably be Benjamin Negron in that midfield instead of Arne Engels. It looks like James Forrest will be trusted on that right wing, given Celtic haven't signed or strengthened before the UEFA deadline. It looks like it will be Adam Ida through the middle. Ryan, is there anything there that you would particularly disagree with, or is this also the team you think Brendan Rodgers will go with tonight?
I think that's the team that Brendan Rodgers will go with tonight. If I'm being honest, if I was deliberating with him in person, I would probably talk about Liam Scales, because I believe that in the last game against Falkirk, now I know there's a little bit of a step up in playing Champions League or would be Champions League opposition in FC Kairat, who are there on merit. Then I would want Austin Trusty in that back line personally, but that's maybe a a personal preference more than anything else. I just thought that he distributed the ball really well the other night, as did Dane Murray, but Cameron Carter-Vickers will be going back into the side, you would imagine. Apart from that, I think the team, as you said, and as many people are saying in the comment section, I think it picks itself, to be honest. I think the midfield picks itself. Benjamin Negron, despite being experimented with on the wing at the end of the game on Friday night, I think he will take that place as a number 8. Number 8 will play in a number 8 position, and I think the front three picks itself, including James Forrest on the right wing and Ida through the middle. So, yeah, I would agree with 9 or 10 out of those 11 players that are starting, but I would make the case for Austin Trusty, because I've been pretty impressed with him so far this season.
So the alternative theory to this predicted 11, and a few people are mentioning this, and obviously it did come across my mind as well, is this kind of theory that you might put Negron on the right, Forrest on the left, and then play Maeda through the middle. Not sure what your thoughts on that are, and I understand the thinking behind that. It's just not really what we've seen so far this season, you know. And when Brendan's played what his preferred, 11 in the first two domestic matches, the league matches, he's kind of gone with what we're seeing on the screen right now. But yeah, people are saying, put James Forrest on the left, put Negron on the right, and put Dyson through centre forward. I'm not totally against that. I'm just not sure we're going to see that from Brendan Rodgers tonight.
Yeah, I just don't see those wholesale positional changes happen, because Benjamin Negron only played 10-15 minutes on the right against Falkirk. I know he played a multitude of positions for Nordjylland during his career in Denmark, but I think Brendan Rodgers sees him as a midfielder, and that's where he'll stay. He'll play him in his optimum position, which Brendan Rodgers believes as a number 8. I think he'll persist with Adam Ida through the middle. I think it'll be a big night if that is the case, and he'll be expected to break his goal scoring duck for the season, because there's a lot riding on this game. I know it's not really a household name that they're coming up against, but it's still the opponent that stands in Celtic's way from getting to the Champions League phase or not. It's a massive game, and players need to stand up and be counted for. They have done so far, the majority of them so far this season. That's why they've got a perfect record and they've only conceded 1 goal. But the stakes are higher tonight. This sets you up for the rest of or at least the first half of the season, Europe wise. So I'm just hoping that certain players can step up and be counted for tonight, and really showcase how good they are under the lights in the Champions League qualifiers. That's my hope.
Again, there is a prevailing theory from the chat here that Negron is going to start on the right tonight. I think he's been Sean McLaren saying I think he's been reluctant to put Negron on the right, so the board don't see him as an option there. However, I think we'll see that tonight with Engels in midfield. Again, I get it, guys. I get kind of but realistically, if you look at the season so far, Negron's played on the right for about 20 minutes in a match against Falkirk. He's not been there at all. He's definitely been a central choice for Brendan Rodgers. So it's just it would be a surprise for me. Some people might not be surprised at all. It would be a slight surprise for me to see that tonight. But listen, I'm open to it as well. If that is the team sheet and we see Negron on that right hand side and we see Maeda through the middle, I'm not going, Brendan Rodgers, what are you doing? I'm going, look, fair enough, you've changed it up and this could work tonight. So you do play the match, you do play the opponent in front of you. He has talked up Arne Engels' strength at a Champions League level in terms of that athleticism and that physicality that he likes in those areas. So I think I said this on a show on Monday with Hamish, the weekly show. Again, I wouldn't be massively surprised if Engels starts tonight, but I'm not convinced.
No, but I think one positive thing, talking about Benjamin Negron, is that you and I have no doubt that Negron will be in the starting lineup tonight, and I think that's a credit to him that he's already made a position on the team in the starting lineup his own, and that he could play in those two positions. I think that shows you how good a signing he's been thus far. A good bargain from Celtic, as much as the transfer window has been, quite rightly ridiculed by a lot of people, or the frustration has been apparent online. Benjamin Negron's a success story thus far because he's really impressed in the 2 or 3 games that he's played for Celtic so far this season. So the fact that he's in the team, and we're not debating whether or not he's going to be in the team, but rather where he's going to be playing, that bodes well for the future for Negron, that he's automatically, or not automatically, but worked his way into the side, and in Celtic's strongest starting 11 at the moment, regardless of where he plays, he will be starting. So I think that's a positive to take for sure.
Yeah, and what we're expecting from Kairat tonight. Well, we've had a fair bit of expert opinion on the website and on the channel. We spoke to the one of the former technical director of the Kazakh Football Federation. He did a video with me yesterday. You know, he thinks this team are going to be attacking tonight. They're not coming to Celtic Park to defend. They play in an attacking way, and they play in that style that pleases their supporters. And I don't think he sees much adaptation for that. He kept emphasising that he thinks that they're going to play in their style, which is an interesting thought to have, in that they're not going to be coming to Celtic to sit low like a lot of teams come to Celtic Park. I think they're going to be giving it a good go tonight. We know they have pretty quick wingers. We know they've got a physical forward, a physical Brazilian forward who likes to push himself a little bit about. And they've got balance in the team with defensive-minded midfielders. They've got a very experienced defence. I think one of their centre-backs is 37 years old, which comes with its benefits and its flaws, of course. I think it's going to be a good open game tonight. That's what I'm foreseeing.
And that suits Celtic to a T, like it did against Falkirk, because Falkirk came out and tried to play and tried to be open and expansive, and they get hit. They get hit 4 times, and it could have and probably should have been more on the night for Celtic. So that's what you want to see. I like the fact that Kairat are going to be viewing this game as an attacking game, if that is the way that they're going to be set up, if that's the way that the experts are talking about them. But that should suit Celtic completely. A team looking to attack at Celtic Park should mean that there's spaces. There should be spaces already, because I think Celtic are a far better team than Kairat, just given the players that they've got at their disposal. But if they're going to leave spaces by attacking, then you've got to look at the likes of Daizen Maeda, Adam Ida coming into this game, seeing this as an opportunity to score a couple of goals. James Forrest to score against Kazakhstani opposition. He's already done so against both Astana and Shakhtar Karagandhi in his career. Was watching the goals yesterday that he scored. Shows you how long that James Forrest has been in and around the Celtic squad, because you see him as essentially a young player playing against Karagandhi. You then see him as an older player, a little bit of an older player against Astana, and now he'll be shaping up against against Kairat tonight. So he's been there the whole time, and he'll be looking to continue his good goal scoring record against Kazakhstan opposition. But I just see this as an opportunity. If Kairat are going to be expansive and look to attack, then there'll be spaces for Celtic to exploit.
I don't think they're gung ho. I mean, that's not what I'm getting at. I mean, actually,
No.
both people I've spoken to, they said when I asked what their biggest strength was, they said their biggest strength was a balance. A balance across the team. They're not too rigid. They're not too rigid defensively. They're not too expansive in an attacking sense. They've got great balance across the team. That's the way it was described to me. But I do think they have like pretty quick wingers. I think they've got good technical players in the forward areas, and that's something to consider.
That's the thing. Even they don't need to be expansive, because a lot of the teams that Celtic play against, certainly domestically, will sit in a low block and not be expansive. So if they're any more positive than the teams that Celtic may be facing the lower end of the Scottish Premiership, then spaces will be left if they're there to attack, and Celtic have got to exploit them.
Yeah, and I think they generally set up in a kind of 4-3-3 formation. Brendan Rodgers mentioned yesterday that their wingers like to come inside as their full-backs, come high as they progress the ball through the pitch. So Brendan Rodgers as well kind of expecting their full-backs to come forward, expecting their wingers to influence the central areas and look to overload Celtic in certain areas. I think it's going to be a good back-and-forth contest tonight. At least that's what I'm hoping for. You never know. Their manager could spring a surprise and play back five and sit in like a lot of other teams do. I think if you're looking to frustrate Celtic, that's definitely the way to go about it. Based on kind of recent history and going back to last season, if you do sit in against Celtic and you aren't ambitious at all with the ball, then it can frustrate Brendan Rodgers' side.
Certainly can, and you don't want the crowd to get frustrated if that is the case, and they play defensively. Obviously, they're well within their right to play whatever way they want. It's a Champions League qualifier. They've got to do what suits them best in order to try and get to the Champions League phase. But I just think that Celtic have a lot going in their favour tonight. Home advantage, as we mentioned at the start of the podcast. despite the rumblings of the transfer window, I think that the team's in a pretty good place at the moment. 3 wins out of 3. I think the crowd will be up for this tonight. I think the atmosphere will be bouncing tonight because it's a European game and people will be up for that. They understand what's at stake and how big Europe is for Celtic in the first half of the season and beyond if you get further. There's a lot riding on the game, but I expect Celtic to use the positives from outside within on the park tonight.
Also has to be noted that, look, as Rodgers kind of goes, we're blocking out all the transfer noise. I'm not showing frustration because if I show frustration, that can transfer to the players. But again, just yesterday, it's clear he wanted players in before this point. Now, I'm not going to go too much into it. It's all been said, and Brendan Rodgers has all said it. I think the point I'm trying to make here is that he then also went on to say that he feels his squad as it stands are good enough and has enough quality to get through this tie in particular. Now, with regard to the league phase, he said that if Celtic make it there and qualify past this round, that they would then need to strengthen to compete at that level. But he isn't making excuses. He's not going, I don't have the players to beat FC Kairat. And I think that's important. And listen, if Celtic don't go through this tie, I don't think it's just on the Celtic board. I think there would be a lot of blame there. But Brendan Rodgers would have to take accountability too, because he's coming out publicly ahead of this saying, I have the squad ready for this tie, for this challenge of the Kazakhstan champions. And I think that's important to underline just going into the tie, because there's been so much talk about transfers, but it's really when you're thinking about making into that league phase and competing at a higher level, that's where Celtic need the transfers. It's not for this tie in particular, although I think we could have definitely have done with better options in attack, especially on that right wing. James Forrest, I think I'm a big fan of James Forrest, but I think given he played a backup role last year, very much a rotation role, I think the fact that he is a potential starter tonight, I think shows that Celtic haven't strengthened from their options last season.
Yeah, I'm trying not to think about that right wing position too much, because the more you think about it, the more you get a little bit frustrated with the fact that at the start of the month, or the start of last month rather, Nicholas Kuhn left the club to join Como, and since then there's been no right wingers come in to replace him. Celtic have just went with what they've got to start the season, and they're starting off their European season with James Forrest on the wing, a player that was there last season who, as you quite rightly said, played a backup role. So yeah, there is that frustration in that position. I think they should have enough. Obviously Celtic should have enough to see off FC Kairat, especially with the first leg being at home. As I said, use that advantage that you've got playing at Celtic Park. But I completely agree with Brendan Rodgers, and I don't think it's a controversial statement whatsoever to suggest that Celtic need to strengthen if they are to get into the league phase, because just looking at the teams that are there, literally every other team has improved this summer. They've all put their money where their mouth is. The teams that have already qualified, and I get that there's maybe I don't know, a bit of reservation to spend money before you get there, and that'll bring about annoyance as well, because Celtic aren't speculating to accumulate. But every other team that'll be playing in the Champions League phase will have strengthened this summer. And if Celtic get through, and you would expect them to get through because they've got the quality players to do so, despite having gaps in some areas, then they're going to need to make some signings if they get through against Kairat.
What did you make of these comments, Ryan, when Brendan Rodgers was talking about money in your bank account and all this? He said, I mentioned this a few weeks ago to the players. I think it's important to set the narrative for them, because like you say, there's so much noise, especially as it ramps up towards the end. I've been in enough changing rooms to know how stability can be lost in this moment, because some players will be thinking, are they staying or are they going? But in the midst of that, you've got really important games. I've already mentioned this to the players' numbers a weeks back, just about respecting and acknowledging it's a difficult part of the season. However, the money will be in your bank every month, and it will be from Celtic, and while it is, you need to perform, so you don't need to worry about anything else. I respect and acknowledge that it can be tough, especially if you're going to be here or not, but if Celtic pay your wages, and while they're there, you focus on doing the very best you can for Celtic. Interesting comments there.
Very, yeah. Measured comments from Brendan Rodgers, but interesting all the same. I've got to say, I'm hoping that he's talking about players that are maybe looking for a move away that aren't fancied by Celtic, more than players that, rather than players that we're not really talking about at the moment getting linked with late moves away. That would be my hope and my not expectation, but yeah, certainly my hope that those players stay at the club and Celtic strengthen rather than needing to replace more first team players that are already playing in the first team at this moment in time. Yeah, I like those comments. I think Brendan Rodgers is very good when it comes to the media and conveying his point, even compared to his first spell. And he did talk about that last season. He says he's more measured. He knows how to deal with maybe the frustrations of not getting what he wants in the transfer window and relaying that message. He can still relay messages. I think he still does it a little bit, not sneakier, maybe sneakier is not the word, but smarter in relaying his messages than what he used to be. But you can still tell when he's frustrated at the way things have gone. The good thing is that you've got the press conferences to watch. I mean, you listen to the press conferences in audio form. That sometimes he's not got the best poker face, and you can tell he's quite frustrated when he's talking about things and he's holding things back. I remember, or I seen in particular last night, a question that he was asked by one of the fan media about Celtic being world class according to Michael Nicholson, and he took a couple of seconds before answering, which tells me that he was trying to be measured in what he was saying, and that frustration was certainly there from the transfer window. So it's always an interesting listen and an interesting watch whenever Brendan Rodgers speaks to the media. Whether that's good or bad in some cases, I think can be up in the air, but it's certainly interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah, this is the question, and the question was, you may be glad that the transfer window is coming to a close in the next 2 weeks, but if you can take your mind back to 2 years ago, you sat next to Michael Nicholson, he said he wants Celtic to be a world-class club in everything that they do. Do you think Celtic's a world-class club in the transfer business so far this summer? He took a long time he collected his thoughts. He didn't answer it straight away. He took time to think about his answer, and he said, listen, I don't know about world class. I just want to make sure that we are in the best possible place we can be. I honestly can't sit here and give you every answer for every question. I'll do my very best. What I want to do is make the team the very best that we can. I'm hoping by the end of the window that we can be that. As a football manager and coach, I would want it now, because I'm going into games here that mean everything for this club going forward. But if we don't have it in the building now, then we have to work with what's here. So I want us to be, operationally, strategically, I'd want us to be the very best we can possibly be. Again, I think he's not letting his full thoughts go forward into the public realm here. I think that's very, very obvious. It's I don't think he should at this
he
point.
Has to play this
no, but
role,
I think he's right in not letting not unleashing his full thoughts and everything going on at Celtic, because it is a distraction and it can transfer onto the players, and he knows this moment is about unity. This moment is about everyone pulling together and getting through this tie, because it's hard enough without getting into complete, like, if Brendan Rodgers goes on a flyer there and starts criticising Michael Nicholson, then that's what all the headlines are today. That's what everyone's thinking about, and it's just a massive distraction going into a tie of this importance. So I think he's skillfully deflecting the questions that he has to deflect and answering the ones that he can.
Yeah, and I think it's all about optics as well and what comes through in a press conference, and he realises that would have a negative perception by most people if he was to come out and completely... Yes, you would get people that would be delighted that, he's calling out the board for the lack of signings. You would get that sort of passion response from some of the supporters, but I think the wider view would be there would be frustration and there would be follow-up articles written about, Brendan Rodgers hasn't settled this and that can cause a firestorm in itself, a completely separate one, where the main focus should be the Champions League tie against FC Kairat. And I thought for the most part of the press conference, through listening to it all, that he did that pretty well. Talking about the Kairat game, he understood the importance, as everybody does, to be honest. He answered what he could when it comes to transfers, but it's a point that we've made earlier on. It's Brendan Rodgers has got this job to talk about transfers because nobody else does at the club.
Yeah.
And he's kind of put in this position. This is the only time that you can really ask about transfers. And if he doesn't have a different answer, then he is going to get frustrated because a lack of deals are happening or a lack of developments are happening, and he's getting asked the same thing again and again and again. And that can cause public perceptions to change of managers, etc. But I thought he handled it pretty well and it was quite measured. But I thought it was a good question by the journalist as well.
Maestro asking, what time is kickoff tonight? He's saying the programme starts at 5:15. I think that's next week, mate. I think the kickoff tonight is definitely 8 o'clock. So if any programme's starting that early, they're going to be vamping for time quite a lot of the time. It's definitely 8 p.m. kickoff at Celtic Park this evening. It's an early kickoff next week in Kazakhstan, just so you're aware.
And that game's on Amazon Prime as well, because I didn't realise that the Tuesday night game was on Amazon Prime until 15 minutes before the kickoff, and I was looking for it on TNT Sports.
Amazon matches can be on BT, I think, on a Tuesday, but Amazon have first pick of the Tuesday matches in the UK and Ireland, I believe. So they can pick one match a week that they want to highlight. And obviously, because the English clubs aren't involved at this stage, they picked Rangers last night and they're picking Celtic next week. Celtic's game is on Amazon Prime. I don't think that's ideal, personally. I don't like all these matches being diversified across lots of different streaming services. It just ramps up the cost that you need to pay out to kind of watch Celtic in every competition. I like as many Celtic matches to be on one channel as possible. I know that's just me being an old man moaning, because I know in the modern world that it doesn't necessarily work out like that. The Prime cover. What do you think of the Prime coverage? I think it's all right. And I'm not particularly talking about the Rangers pundits last night, but what do you think of the whole setup? You can do things like put the stadium effects on, where there's no commentary, you just listen to the crowd. I think that's quite a good touch.
I think on the whole, the Prime coverage has been really good, and I count the Premier League coverage that they had for the past couple of years as well. I think you do see a noticeable, maybe not upgrade, but improvement when games are on Prime compared to when they're on TNT
just
Sports.
Something different, isn't it? Something different.
And they've always got good pundits as well on. You notice that in the Tuesday night game. There's always, household names, the likes of Clarence Seedorf, Wayne Rooney as well. I'm not sure who the pundits will be tonight. You would expect maybe somebody like Martin O'Neill to be at the game, maybe potentially Joe Hart, but they always seem to bring in the big names, Amazon Prime. That's because they've got a lot of money behind them to do so. But yeah, it's good coverage from what I've seen, and it was good coverage last night for the Rangers game against Bruges.
Yeah, I think someone asking, is the game on Celtic TV? I don't think it is. Is it not audio only it's audio commentary only for the UEFA games? So they do show every domestic game for subscribers worldwide, but I think anyone subscribed to Celtic TV can't watch these UEFA games on Celtic TV because it's audio only, just because of the way the UEFA restrictions work on rights around these matches. So that's something to consider as well. So, yep. Just on Enaura. Interesting comments again from Brendan Rodgers. He was asked, there's no room for Hayato Enaura in your Champions League squad. Can you elaborate on that decision? He said, yeah, it's very easy. He's not quite at the level as of yet that I would expect. The plan for Enaura was to come in and train and see where he was, with the possibility of going out on loan because he's only had a year's football. He came in as a centre-half stroke left-back, but his defensive qualities aren't at the level that would see me put him in. It's as simple as that, so that's why he's not involved. He played in some really good games against Cork and Queen's Park, but the reality is that's the level that you play. You get 80% of the ball, and you've got the ball. We also need a player that can defend, and we're hoping that over the next couple of years, with experience and with maybe a loan, that can take place. But at this very moment, that's why he's not in the squad. It's as simple as that. So that clears up Enaura. It's kind of what I thought, Ryan, and I said this last week. I think for all the positivity about what he was doing in pre-season, I said last week that that's pre-season. Brendan Rodgers knows that's pre-season. The games at the start of the Scottish Premiership ramp up in intensity, and he clearly wasn't ready. And Brendan Rodgers confirming that with his comments yesterday.
Yeah, that's one of those comments that I think if people down the line ask where is Enaura, what's happening with Enaura, you just point them in the direction of that quote from Brendan Rodgers, because it is crystal clear where he sits at the moment, at least in the pecking order at left back and at Celtic in general. So it would seem that a loan deal would be likely for the player before the window's up. Hopefully somewhere. I wouldn't want him to go back to Japan. I want him to be tested in Europe and get used to the physicality of European football ahead of a potential future at Celtic. And I'm sure that'll be the case. They'll look to maybe get a loan deal somewhere, whether that's in Scotland or further afield in Europe. But I think his long-term development has got to be in European football to get him used to the challenges and expectations of playing in Europe for Celtic, or playing in a European domestic league. I've got to say, and I don't know if we're going to be touching on it today, but I wanted to bring it up anyway. Brendan Rodgers' comments on Dane Murray were a lot more positive than the ones on Hayato and Enaura. Was delighted to hear that Brendan Rodgers, I mean, he's made the point clear, to be honest, over the past 6 months or so, that he's a big fan of Dane Murray and what he brings and what he could bring in the coming years. But the fact that he came out and said that he'll be competing with Cameron Carter-Vickers for that right centre-back slot must be music to Dane Murray's ears, considering the turmoil that his careers went through, despite only being 22 years old. Two separate ACL injuries. He's been in and out of the side. He made his debut at the age of 17. To get that ringing endorsement from Brendan Rodgers yesterday, that must be enough for him to keep going and really try and push into this starting lineup. Was delighted to hear what he had to say about Dane Murray yesterday, and it really bodes well for the future. And I've been pretty impressed by what I've seen so far, both in pre-season and against Falkirk.
I was delighted too, because I did a Dane Murray segment on the Celtic Way Weekly on Monday, and I was like, I think he maybe has a bigger role this season than some people think. And then the next day, Brendan Rodgers is talking like he's one of his go-to options. He's not going out on loan. Brendan Rodgers saying yesterday that he's considered whether to send Dane Murray out on loan, but he wants 5 central defenders as part of his group moving forward this season, and Dane Murray is one of those, and certainly is directly competing now with Cameron Carter-Vickers. It sounded like he's Cameron Carter-Vickers' primary backup, to be quite frank with you. Said he would have no qualms about putting him into matches, even if he had to play tonight, he would have no problem starting Dane Murray. Bobby 1962 making the point here, Welsh was in training picks yesterday. Yeah, but again, Brendan Rodgers kind of suggesting Welsh isn't in the picture. He's got these 5 centre-back options that he's going to progress with, and it sounds like Stephen Welsh will be heading out of Celtic at some point this month. He talked about the difficulties of the maximum number of international loans you can have, and sometimes you might need to sort out a transfer. The reason Welsh is training with the squad right now and with the squad is he's actually part of the UEFA squad as part of the homegrown rules. He's one of these 8 players that make up the part of the 25-man squad, so that's why Stephen Welsh is still in and about it at the moment. Interesting comments on Dane Murray again, and I think this hasn't come out of the blue, and this was the point I was making on Monday. He's been talking about Dane Murray in this context for at least 6 months now, so I'm not surprised at all that Dane Murray is now part of this first team group pushing for matches. And I think if Cameron Carter-Vickers has to be rotated out of the team, it sounds like Dane Murray will be the player that Brendan Rodgers turns to. I think, obviously, the jury's out on Dane Murray. I don't think you can accurately predict how it goes from this point, but I think he'll be given the opportunity to show which way it can go either way, and I think that's a positive, because he needs the opportunities,
Yeah, and Brendan Rodgers has spoke about the 5 centre-backs, so you're piecing the puzzle together, the jigsaw puzzle together of the 5 centre-halves that Celtic have got. So you would expect that to be Cameron Carter-Vickers, Liam Scales, Simpson Pusey, Austin Trusty and Dane Murray, so that'll be your 5. Yep. That could change because players might want more game time and they might not want to be part of that competition. I look specifically at an asset in Austin Trusty and think, are you happy with the amount or lack of game time that you're getting at this moment in time? I know it's a long season and rotation will be key, but I think we'll see in the next couple of weeks how the pecking order really does stack up at Celtic, because we'll get a closer look at Simpson Pusey. Not to say that he'll come in tonight and make an impact. I don't think he'll play tonight, but I think there's a good chance of him potentially starting at the weekend for his first game, to get a good look at him against Livingston potentially. I think it's an interesting area of the pitch. Dane Murray's provided a little bit of intrigue for me. Yes, the jury's out on him, but seeing a player come through the academy, we had that initial exposure to him. He's had that tumultuous time with 2 really bad injuries, and he's came back and he's ready to fight for his place, and he's got a ringing endorsement from his manager. So it's really good to see, and it's good that Brendan Rodgers has no qualms about throwing him in when required, because that shows that he has trust in the player to do a job if called upon. So he had a great day last Friday, got his new contract, got his goal against Falkirk. Now it's all about kicking on and getting first team football. But a real vote of confidence that he's not been sent out on loan, because it might hinder his development almost, because Brendan Rodgers wants him to stay at Celtic and be a first team player. I think that bodes really well for the future for Dane Murray, and he deserves a lot of credit for sticking in there all these years.
Henrik McGlaston saying 2 wingers, a striker and a left back, and I'll be happy. Am I being greedy? I'm not going to give a long answer on this, Ryan, but no, you're not being greedy. That's what Celtic need. Like, it's very obvious to me that's what Celtic need. Will it happen? That's another thing. But I think if you look at the squad as it stands, I think that's clear where the deficiencies are. I think the need for a left back has become a lot more urgent, just given where Enaura is in Brendan Rodgers' mind. And yeah. Maestro asking, where's the young lad Donovan? I believe he's heading out on loan this week. And that will be confirmed quite soon, I think. So I think he's heading out on loan for the season. So that'll be a good move for him. Yeah, so he's not in the first team setup as it stands. He's going to get his chance to get some playing time elsewhere. Anything else, Ryan, before we go? It's, like I say, it's a big night. It's a massive night. We see everyone in the chat. There's definite excitement in the live chat today. Lots of talking points. A few people come in at me regarding the Celtic TV thing. A few of our international viewers asking whether it's on Celtic TV. Listen, you can come at me tomorrow if I'm wrong, but I'm very, very confident that for these UEFA games, Celtic TV only has audio commentary. So I'm just putting it out there. I might be totally wrong, but I know I'm not. Ryan, any thoughts on tonight before we go?
It's just a long day ahead of a big night for Celtic. I think now that we've done the briefing and we'll go off and we'll think about the game. But it's now the calm before the storm tonight, and you're hoping that Celtic can whip up a storm, whip up a frenzy at Celtic Park at home, get that home advantage. I know I've mentioned that probably about 5 or 6 times, but it's so important, and even more so with the fact that you've got the Kazakhstan trip next week. So I want Celtic, in an ideal world, I want Celtic to have the tie essentially over in the first leg. That's got to be the aim and objective for Celtic tonight, to show their best tonight, to use the fullbacks effectively. You know, we got a little taster of it on Friday of how good Alistair Johnston and Kieran Tierney can be in the same team. I think those 2 weapons on either flank have got to be utilised by Celtic tonight, and if chances are made by those 2, then the forwards and wingers have got to take those chances that are made, and some of the midfielders that will make late runs into the box. Celtic will get chances tonight. It's just all about taking those chances at home. But yeah, now we wait until the match arrives.
Yep, we've got full coverage across the YouTube channel and the website, everyone. So keep it tuned to the Celtic Way, celticway.co.uk as well. We've got expert insight on Kairat on the channel and on the website, depending on how you like to take it. You might like to watch a video about it. You might like to read it written up by myself. We've got loads of stuff. We've got Brendan Rodgers' full press conference yesterday. We've got opinion on the overall big picture at Celtic with regard to transfers and everything going on, not strengthening before the deadline, etc. We've got it all covered, everyone. We've got all the news throughout the day and this evening as well. So yeah, lots going on. We love it. It's a great match tonight. Champions League is the best place for Celtic to be. I'm really excited about the game. I'm really excited about Celtic hopefully taking one step further towards the league phase for another tilt at the big time. FC Kairat will be difficult opponents, but I think Celtic have the quality in the building to get the job done. And that's my opinion on this evening. Ryan, we'll leave the score predictions for later on when you're outside Celtic Park. But thanks for joining me this morning. Thanks everyone in the live chat for joining us. Thanks for joining us in the comments below. Let us know how you think tonight's going to go and how you feel about this tie in general. And we'll see you again next time on the Celtic Way.